All right, good afternoon. Thank you, sir. My name is Leslie Hollingsworth, and on behalf of the National Alumni Board, it is my pleasure as president of the Alumni Association of Trinity University to welcome you to today's Alumni Awards Luncheon. We're so pleased to have so many staff, trustees, administrators, faculty, alumni, guests, and students with us today as we recognize our alumnees and awardees. Chris Newport from Houston, and he is from class of 2008, our Outstanding Young Alumnus. And John Mace from class of 1971, our Greek Alumni Advisor of the Year. So we all know that Trinity University offers a transformational education for talented students today. And Trinity prepares its students to be adaptive, successful adults through academic programs that cultivate both intellectual focus and civic engagement. So it should be as no surprise to you that we recognize two graduates who display these very same characteristics. We are especially proud to be able to claim both of these extraordinary people as alumni of this institution and are gratified by the example that they are setting for the students of today. Now, before we begin the lunch, I'd like to recognize just a few people that are here with us today, and then I'll introduce a few more people after lunch. So at the head table, we have Dr. Danny Anderson, President of Trinity. And as I've mentioned, Chris Newport, class of 2008, our Outstanding Young Alumnus. Along with Chris is Allison, class of 2007, his spouse. We also have two very cute boys, Tristan and Ellis, their sons. John Mace, class of 1971, our Greek Alumni Advisor of the Year. With him is Susan Mace, his spouse. Trustee Bob McLean, class of 1961. Chaplain Emeritus Raymond Judd, class of 1956. And Andrew Colton, class of 2005, our Tennessee Alumni Chapter President. Now, Reverend Nickel, will you please come to the podium and give our invocation?
It is good to simply be here together. It's even better to be here together eating. And it is best of all to be here together eating and celebrating. So with gladness, let us lift up our hearts in prayer. Merciful God, you plant within each of us seeds of bold hope, which blossom and bear the fruit of empathy, passionate creativity, and diligence as you transform us into agents of your grace and stewards of the beauty of your creation. We celebrate that transformation today. We celebrate the passion and excellence and renewing vision of your servants, Chris and John, two of Trinity's own. We lift up thanks for them and the paths they have journeyed thus far, serving human communities, mentoring their charges, evoking the best from others that all might flourish. May their example be for us all an inspiration and a challenge to cultivate the bold hope planted within us, that the particular calling that claims each of us might bear good fruit. By your grace may it be so. Now bless this food and our table fellowship, we pray. Amen.
Hope everybody's enjoyed a great lunch here. I'd like to also make a few more important introductions. I want to recognize the National Alumni Board members present this afternoon. It's a committee of board members that goes through all the award nominations to find just the right alumni to honor. And with the directors of the National Alumni Board members here today, please stand and be recognized. Thank you. Also, we have with us this afternoon several previous distinguished alumni and Greek Alumni Advisor of the Year recipients. First, I would like to recognize the distinguished alumni in the audience. Please stand or wave your hand when I call your name. Raymond Judd. Bob McLean. David Strauss, class of 1944. We're also honored to have the very first recipient of the Greek Alumni Advisor of the Year attending today, Jeannie McGee Culver, class of 1982. Thank you all. Now, as you've heard, the Alumni Association recognizes alumni with 4 awards annually. A 5th award, the Honorary Alumni Citation, has been given to only 3 people by the current Alumni Association. One of Trinity's former presidents and his wife, Dr. and Mrs. Ron Calgard, and Dr. Colleen Grissom, who has served Trinity and the community for many years. Will Dr. and Mrs. Calgard please stand and be recognized? Thank you. So we're proud to honor 2 remarkable alumni. The Outstanding Young Alumnus Award was established to honor Trinity alumni who have graduated in the past 15 years. We select alumni who have distinguished themselves in their profession and in service to the community, setting a standard of excellence worthy of recognition by the Alumni Association and the university. The Greek Alumni Advisor of the Year Award was created last year to honor an alumnus or alumna whose outstanding service in an advisory capacity to a university, fraternity, or sorority sets a standard of excellence worthy of recognition by the Alumni Association and the university. To introduce our first honoree, Chris Newport, with the Outstanding Young Alumnus Award, it is my pleasure to call to the podium Nadia Islam.
It's my great pleasure to talk to all of you about Chris Newport today. He has quite a long list of accomplishments, so I'll only highlight a few of the important ones. He has obviously graduated from Trinity University with a degree in economics, and he left with a great relationship with all of his professors and friends. He served in the Navy for 5 years. He found a wonderful wife in Allison Newport and is raising 2 adorable little pirates, Kristen and Ellis. While working full-time raising kids, he also decided to get his master's in business administration from Rice University. And most recently, he has been serving as Chief of Staff for the Mayor of Houston, the 4th largest city in the nation, for the last 2 years. And finally, possibly his greatest accomplishment of all, Chris has gotten a sandwich named after him at Bombay Bicycle Club. And that sandwich is delicious. But this very impressive list of accomplishments was not really the only reason behind my nomination for him to receive this award. Other than being wildly successful at everything that he does, Chris is a person who has earned the love, respect, and admiration of everyone who knows him. He's a generous friend, an incredibly hard worker. He's always there when he needs his help. And not only does he give his best to all his endeavors, he inspires all others to do the same. Trinity should be very proud to produce such a gem of an alumnus. It's really, truly an honor to introduce you, Chris Newport.
Oh, and also President Danny Anderson.
So it is my honor, on behalf of Trinity University and the Alumni Association, to present you with the 2015-2016 Outstanding Young Alumnus Award. The Alumni Association could not have chosen a more distinguished person for this award. We're proud to recognize your accomplishments and contributions. Those of you who are sitting here cannot see, but the awards have been sitting on the table in front of us throughout the meal. But to help commemorate this, there is a plaque here that I'm going to read. For his passionate pursuit of solutions and problems besetting the nation's 4th largest city, for his expertise in strategic analysis in the design and execution of communication strategies for initiatives related to municipal operations, for his efforts to pivot city operations toward its citizens, client departments, and employees, for using his powerful role as the mayor's chief of staff to ensure the smooth operation of Houston's executive branch, for his honorable service to the country as a U.S. naval officer, and for the honor and distinction he brings to his alma mater. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Let's pose with Nadia for one more picture.
Some of you know that I'm not really supposed to be standing here. So when Mary Kay called me earlier this summer and told me about the decision of the National Alumni Board, and I've made this joke a couple of times already this afternoon, but I'm going to make it again because it's a joke, but I think it's true. I was convinced that the Alumni Board must have been meeting at Bombay Bicycle Club at Bill's place. So my path to graduation at Trinity was not a straight one, and unconventional is probably a fair description of it. But it happened the way that it did, I think for a reason, and I'm better off for it, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Because what I learned from my experience at Trinity and the uniqueness of it was invaluable, and it's made me who I am today, and not just from the things that I learned in the classrooms in this building. Everyone should be an econ major, by the way, right, Dr. Butler? The other buildings can be brand new and shiny and everything, but you really learn in the sparseness that is Chet. I didn't succeed at my first attempt at Trinity. Would be a conservative way of describing it. But had I succeeded, I wouldn't have learned how to recognize opportunities that are created whenever failure is experienced, how to fail fast and how to stand back up. I wouldn't have met my wife, and I wouldn't have been able to experience all that I wouldn't be working at the City of Houston. I wouldn't have met wonderful people like Nadia, and Trinity is the only place that I've really ever wanted to be, and this means the world to me, and I can't thank everyone enough, and I'm honored to be sharing today with such a man as John Mace, and who's meant so much to the men of the Bengal Lancers. Guys, thanks for being here, and really made an impact on so many young men's lives. So, John, it's an honor to be here with you. I have other words written down, but I think I'll save those. Thank you very much. This is an honor of my life. Thank you.
All right. So to introduce our Greek Alumni Advisor of the Year, John Mace, we're going to be joined by Sandy Payson.
Good afternoon. Introducing John Mace is really an honor. You know, he only has about 44 years of Lancers to choose from, and I don't know, maybe Susan had something to do with it, but anyway, so who's really feeling special today? You know, it's really me, so thank you. I met John about an hour after arriving late on the Trinity campus in September 1967 as a scared-to-death freshman from a small town of Prescott, Arizona. After all, I had graduated from Arizona High School with 23 other fellow seniors. Was I feeling overwhelmed or what? Yes, I mean, this was overwhelming to me. So why did I meet John so soon after my arrival? Well, the story is, I heard about this preacher's kid from Wood River, Illinois, and I just couldn't wait to meet him. And well, that's for Hollywood. That didn't quite how it works out. The only person I knew at Trinity was an old roommate, a friend of mine, a classmate from Arizona. He was from Tucson, a guy named Mike Miller. And so I looked up at his room, and I immediately ran down there expecting that I was going to have this great big bear hug from my buddy, the only guy that I knew. Who opens the door but this big, tall, smiley guy wearing this absolutely hideous maroon beanie. Now, can you really imagine John wearing a beanie cap? Well, it's a sight. And all he said to me was, "Hello, Texas." Well, that to me was a shock. That was my first day in Texas. I was happy to meet up with Mike, but better yet, that evening began a lifelong friendship with Big John. Well, he got that nickname pretty soon, as a couple of wimpy freshmen weighing about 145 pounds each were no match for this guy. It didn't take long to figure out that he needed this tall body to encase this enormous heart that he carries around. We began college, Mike and John and me, as a trio of buddies, Tres Amigos. Well, the Tres Amigos, we fast forward to the spring of 1968, Mike and I knew we better pledge to a fraternity, because between us, the first semester, we only had 10 dates. Mike had 9 of them. So I knew I was in real trouble. I had to immediately at least find out who these Chi Betas were. So the Tres Amigos were all set to go one way. Well, I happened to have a suite mate where I was living on the 3rd floor, and his name, he was a Lancer, named Glenn Tappan. Some of you probably know Glenn, better known as Tap. He told me if I didn't pledge Lancers that he would throw me off the dorm balcony. I didn't want to challenge him because I really think he probably would have done that. The only problem was with this whole thing was the Tres Amigos were really becoming Dos Amigos. Well, that wasn't so good. Let's just say that John was not ready to pledge in the spring of 1968. Remember I mentioned he's a preacher's son? Well, the poor guy from Wood River was a little bit starved for fun. Let me reference this by saying people in St. Louis don't go out on Saturday night heading to Wood River, Illinois for a whole bunch of fun. So I guess John had a little too much fun to pledge with us. But it wasn't that John was lacking in smarts, because that's what first people started to say. He just happened to have his priorities slightly out of line. Well, it's safe to say also, I could not believe, as they're talking to this guy and his study habits and everything, I found out he had the highest SAT scores I've ever heard of. It's also safe to say that I think his SAT scores passed mine when he turned to page 2 of the test. But for John, the Dos Amigos, we survived our little hell week, and we got through that, and we knew that John would be an absolute slam dunk into the fall of '68 pledge class. Bingo! We finally beat the Triniteers in flag football. How did we do that? We got John as a pledge. It was great. John would get on the line, he'd clear out the entire line, and nobody was going to be messing around with these little silly red flags on the Lancers' hips. Nope, John took care of that. But John was also really serious about studies. Now, that probably was because he took a little time off when he got here. But then he really got serious about it, and so he became a suite mate of mine, and he says, it's a tough regiment here. He says, we're going to goof off, and we're going to play backgammon until 7:30, then it's over. We're studying. And that went on until 11 o'clock, better known as showtime. Well, a lot of our friends were off and running off to Crystal Pistol, but we didn't do that. We went out for a champion's meal. Welcome to college, Sandy boy. This is the way it works. John picked the place and the menu. Oh, those were the days, as 3 or 4 of us would trot off and have breakfast at 11 p.m. Big John was Mr. Lancer from day 1 of his fall pledge class. It was fun harassing, these days I guess we got to use the term teasing, I guess, the big fella. But he would even up with the score later on, luckily making other pledges grovel, not the Lancers who tried to make him miserable. His fall pledge class of '68 was a very small one, but probably one of the most impactful ones Lancers ever had because of the people that were in there. Who knew that 40-some years later, John would receive the all-time Bengal Lancer Award, which many Lancers are so proud of and well-deserved. Now let's get back to that big heart of his. He had an imprint on hundreds of Lancers, keeping all the pledge classes together, up to date on news and events, and when bleak times really hit the Lancer organization at Trinity, where was John? He was right there, stoking the fires with more of his instrumental and passionate firewood. He would not let go. So it goes without saying, without John Mace, Lancers would just be kind of a thought of the past for me and for many other Lancers here today. So it was really easy for John and to see that he is and still all along has been the glue for many of us. He would do more than say more, very clearly. He lives the spirit of Bengal Lancers and made my days at Trinity wonderful. Trinity is definitely a better university because of the likes of John Mace. Well, then comes along his wife, Susan. Just what John needed, more encouragement to be a better person. Yeah, that's what he really needed. He really needed to be a better person. His cup was already overflowing, and now Susan wanted a piece of that big heart. Some of you know the short, wonderful story about John and Susan, but I got to share that for some that may not know it. She's obviously younger and prettier than John. That goes without saying. But she said in her own words to me years ago, I was looking to have a great time in college. I was going to attend classes. I was going to meet all types of great people. And I certainly didn't want to fall in love. But I just couldn't help myself. I just couldn't get John out of my heart. I'll never forget that line because no one else can either. So some of you may just know this guy, and I hardly recognize him today, but as a guy in short pants wearing a red St. Louis shirt and accompanied by those silly emblazoned cardinal little birdie things on his white tennis shoes. That's what you see with John. But there's so much more to this man. He's the real deal. He's simply the nicest, most sincere man I have ever known. I don't believe he ever learned the art of talking behind one's back or thinking of a person was lesser than he and expecting gratitude in return. He wasn't looking for anything. So it's my pleasure, my honor, and my utmost privilege to introduce a great friend, a gentle of a man who has touched so many lives associated with Trinity University and the Bengal Lancers, Mr. John Mace.
So it is my honor on behalf of Trinity University and the Alumni Association to present you with the 2015-2016 Greek Alumni Advisor of the Year. There's a crystal obelisk that sits on the table where John has been sitting as a symbol of our appreciation for his distinguished career and his ongoing relationship with Trinity. And I have this certificate that expresses our pride, and I want to read the citation. For his lifelong engagement with and support of Bengal Lancers and other Trinity students, for taking the initiative in seeking out and introducing himself to younger alumni, for establishing enduring relationships with numerous Trinity faculty and staff, for strengthening the Lancer Alumni Network through newsletters and organizing the Lancer Chi Beta Alumni Weekend Party, for providing outstanding leadership and guidance as the fraternity's alumni advisor, for his loyalty, generosity of spirit, and kinship, and for the honor and credit he brings to the Bengal Lancers fraternity. Congratulations.
Let's see if I can do this right. Okay. First, I need to warn you all that if you get too close to Susan and me today, there's an excellent chance you're going to see some puppy pictures. Anyway, it's great to have you all here. I'm floored by receiving this honor. And it's great to have so many old friends here, and you know, I'm amazed at how much you all have aged. You know that Susan and I are still too young to have kids. And but anyway, and it's also great that we have today's Lancers here, and some from in between. You know, being in a fraternity or sorority is not necessarily for everybody, but it worked well for me, and certainly don't want to discourage anyone from getting involved in that. A few years ago, when our niece and nephew were going off to college, that I think their parents were kind of skeptical on whether or not they should join a fraternity or sorority, and Susan was kind of telling her sister, says, "Oh no, you know, I've been through that. I think it's all right for them to do it," and they've both done it and have enjoyed their experiences. And you know, Susan was actually she was not involved in a sorority at UT, and she was skeptical, really, of what they were. She was thought they were probably a little uppity or whatever. And over the years, you know, as she has met my fraternity brothers and friends, every time she meets somebody new, she says, "Man, they're even nicer than anybody else I've met." You know, that, and so that's kind of how her perspective has changed over the years. That there's, in and of itself, there's not anything wrong with being in a fraternity or sorority, and that there's often good to be achieved from it. Want to pause and break for a moment. Also want to express prayers for our friend Mike Zuber. He was not able to be here today. That his daughter Emily was pregnant and just lost the baby, and so he was on his way here when he got word of that, and had to head back the other way. So I want to keep them in our prayers. I want to acknowledge kind of a list of people in no particular order, but these are people that were involved in the time that I was at Trinity, and I may not get them into the stories that I may have to tell in my allotted time here. So just to get their names out there, I'd like to make mention of Sandy Payson, Mike Miller, Doc Hunter, Dr. Ed Roy, Paul Walthall, Jim Potter, Jess McClay, Dr. James Laurie, Dr. Bruce Thomas, Russ Gossage, Shackelford Milligan, alias Shack, Felix Staling, A.K. Nelson, Pete Murphy, Bob McKinley, Pancho Walthall, O.Z. White, Paul Gallagher, Gene Kimes, Doug Guthier, Gene Potter, Knox Gilmore, Steve Jennings, Brad Blodgett, Alan Byers, Glenn Tappan, John Pulaski Walker, Dr. Alan Counselor, Barry Wayne Roberts, and Beasy. The process of getting things together here today, I've had to reflect on my times at Trinity and my relation with Trinity, and who was involved and what and how. And most of you know my primary relation with Trinity is through Bengal Lancers, but you know, they don't exist without the university, and I'm fully aware of that. But you know, that's where my heart really is, and so I try to keep them together. But anyway, that's where it is. Sandy made reference to our first day together and the beanies, and this was the university actually hazing us as freshmen at the time, but it it was not necessarily a bad thing. Here it is, 45 years later or so, and we're still talking about it. It was a form of creating a little bond by having everybody go through that. So not all hazing is necessarily really a bad thing. Some of it is, but back in the early 2000s, I saw some BL stickers on some cars about a block away from our house, so that it was obvious that there were some Lancers renting this place, and so one day I couldn't stand it anymore and went up to the door and introduced myself, and they were familiar with who I was, or the name anyway, and so anyway, since then we have had some Lancers kind of working for us part-time, off and on, ever since. So I've kind of gotten to know each group of new guys, and that's been fun. It's everybody that has been in it have been guys that I would have been glad to have been part of the fraternity when I was there. So it's really great to have this relation with these younger people, and I've thoroughly enjoyed that they get a kick out of the fact that I can still name our pledge class. A couple of my pledge brothers are here, but so it's Hine, Hilton, Mace, Robert Smith, Turner, Wolfley, and then Wolf Benner is here. He was an active when I was pledging, and so I'd have to know his pledge class too, which was a little bit harder. But it's Benner, Crosby, Dar, Stewart, Fraser, Gordon, Lockwood, Manning, Perino, Pulaski, Spears, Taylor. And knowing those kinds of things, or being able to do that type of thing, is considered verboten nowadays. But that's an argument I would like to take up with some people. But it seems to be within the overall academic community nationally that this is the case, and so it's a bigger platform to have that little talk. So anyway, do I have somebody timing me here? Okay. And I've had more written there. We used to, another hazing item we used to have was getting signatures, and there were easy signatures to get, and there were hard ones. And of course, the hard ones were the actives and stuff, but there were others that were easier, that were permitted for you to get, that had more or less peripheral relation with the Lancers. Be it the sponsors, Paul Walthall or Ed Roy, or some of the alums, including Reverend Judd and Jim Potter, and Gene Kimes was still on campus at the time, working in the admissions office. And so I learned to go get those easy signatures, but would also have to go through the Wolf's little games that he would play with me, but anyway, it was an exercise that really was beneficial. Got to know people, and it is a good way of getting to know them. But some of those people, I've just managed to run into them in various ways over the years, and have maintained a relationship with them, including Reverend Judd and Jim Potter and dealing with their kids when I was a YMCA director, or some of the other faculty. And you know, in that list of people that I kind of threw out there at the beginning, a lot of them were not really my faculty. I didn't have them for class. And yet there were people that somehow we managed to have a good relation. I mean, Dr. McLay, I mean, I had him for PE 100, but you know, we all had him. I mean, everybody had to take that course at the time. But he got us to play racquetball, and we would get to know some of the other students. My suite mate was Doug Guthier. Well, Doug was not an athlete, but we would play racquetball occasionally because, one, we had to because of PE 100. So everybody got exposed to it a little bit, and there was a little exercise called the Jessie, which I cannot begin to perform again, but it was a very complicated jumping jack exercise and coordination thing where you would be rubbing your tummy and patting your head and things like that while you were doing some other coordination things. But anyway, somehow that group of people have managed to stick with me through the years, and they're a very nice group of people. And I don't know whether Dr. Laurie or Bruce Thomas were the primary people of getting them together, but it seemed to work. A couple of one of the names I left out of there, I think, was Coach Houston Wheeler. Very, very nice man. I wasn't a baseball player, but I had friends that were, and somehow I got to know Coach Wheeler, his son, young Houston. There were a number of years where I would go spend New Year's Day over at the Wheeler's house. Coach Wheeler was a very, very nice man. Another nice man. Fortunately, they have named a building for him, so he still gets remembered. But exceedingly nice man was Albert Herfbays, alias Beasy. And Sandy had alluded to it, but I was on Coach Robbie's academic deficient team that freshman year. That's why I wasn't able to rush. I don't know that I would have rushed that year without Sandy and Mike having gone through it. But when they did it and encouraged me to do so, then Beasy kind of helped make that possible. And he helped, I think, a lot of people through Trinity in that era. And he was just an exceedingly nice man. I was kind of thinking about it as I was getting this prepared. And it wasn't anybody that I was that close to or anything, but I recognize now that he was just very beneficial. And so want to thank you all for this honor, and I truly appreciate it, and thank you, Beasy.
I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this special occasion to recognize two of our alumni's finest. We are proud to claim them as our own and to honor them. We are so blessed to have such a deep pool of alumni with the qualifications to make them worthy of the consideration of these honors. And we'd like to thank all of you who took the time to submit nominations this year, as well as the National Alumni Board Committee that had the tough choices in making this year's selections. And while the board chooses the honorees, we encourage everyone to continue to provide us with nominations in the coming years to bring our attention to the exceptional alumni of Trinity University. I hope the students here today with us will use this incredible opportunities that the Trinity education affords you. So no matter what colleges that Chris and John could have attended they were destined to do something important with their lives. Yet a Trinity education prepared them for success like no other. So congratulations again to both of our honorees, and this concludes our program. Thank you very much. Safe travels home.